Welcome to the Deep Six podcast, where we make a generational impact on you and yours. What we do here is explore a 6-point model into your health, your life, and your journey while you're here. So let's dive deep and help you thrive, not just survive. Hello. Welcome again to the Deep Six with Dr. Lewerenz and all my guests that are amazing. But man, today I'm stoked. And I know it's going to sound funny and seems weird, but here's the reason is because not only do I have an amazing guest with me that we could spend hours talking and it would not only enlighten you and entertain you, but he's a good friend of mine. And yes, he forced his friendship on me, and I'll explain that in a bit. But my guest today, Gino Wickman, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, you're a legend in a lot of circles. In fact, before we went on the air here, right, you were saying like,
it's gotten weird.
Gotten weird. Yeah, well, as long as I said, right, as long as they're talking good about you.
That's right.
Right? So Gino, again, welcome. Thank you so much for being on here. Okay.
Pleasure. I'm looking forward to this, Doc.
Some people, and I've been even criticized a little bit for this about my podcast because they're like, they don't quite get it. But you get me. I get you. That's why we're sitting here, because we're going to talk about your book, even your newest book, Shine. I have it here. Great book. Okay, go out and buy it, read it. It'll impact your life. Okay. You don't have to do shameless plugs here. I do it for you.
I appreciate that.
Okay. But no, let me introduce you though, fully, so that I do it justice. Okay. And feel free to interrupt.
You got it.
Okay. But, Gino has been an entrepreneurial since age 21. He's had an obsession with learning and what makes business and entrepreneurs thrive. At 25, he took a family business that was deeply in debt and needing help. And after turning the company around and running it for 7 years, he and his partner successfully sold that company. Gino then set out to help entrepreneurs and leaders get what they want in business and their lives. Based on his years of real world experience, he created EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which I personally use in our business. And after you forced it on me, thank you though.
You're welcome.
It's a huge asset. Thank you for forcing that. And I'll explain that, which is a practical method of helping companies achieve greatness. He has personally delivered more than 2,000 full day sessions for more than 135 companies, helping them implement EOS. He's also the author of the award-winning best-selling book, Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business. By the way, an awesome book. Love it. Tell everybody to read it. It's sold over 1 million copies, as well as 5 other books in the Traction library that have sold almost 3 million copies. Gino is the founder of EOS Worldwide, an organization that helps tens of thousands of business implementers in using EOS aid in an international team, over 800 professional certified EOS implementers and online support. There are over 250,000 companies using EOS tools worldwide. Gino has helped hundreds of thousands to master their outer world. Gosh.
It's always weird sitting and listening to my
It is.
intro.
But I know you didn't write this.
I can't wait till it's over.
I know you didn't write this. Your wife wrote this. Right?
No,
Kathy,
my assistant wrote it, actually.
Yeah. Kathy didn't write this?
No, she didn't.
Okay. Well,
she would write a whole different kind of intro.
Well, we'll leave it at that. But yeah. But this to me even does you a little injustice. And the reason is because even before we went on the air and I asked you something which we don't always talk a lot about business, and so I'm like, how many companies and what, and I know it's on here, but it's like, because the thread of impact when you talk about cultures in business and leaders and then, if you go to a restaurant, big restaurants, you need a lawyer, you're getting asphalt, you're having somebody, deal real estate, or you're dealing with a realtor, it's very, very, very possible, regardless of what state you're in, that they've been touched through Gino and EOS.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And that's pretty realistic.
There's truth to that, for
sure.
Yeah,
very, very much so. But I want to talk a little bit about, and this is really your book, very, very cool, very interesting, and we can talk about what got into that, but you also, so you wrote Shine recently, and it's you share these 10 disciplines of maximizing your impact and inner peace. And I think that inner peace thing is really, really key. Gino has been practicing these disciplines for almost 20 years with great success and is excited to share them with you. Once implemented, they help you drive entrepreneurial creative foundation and a platform that creates space in their life to begin to go inside and master their inner world, which is where true entrepreneurial freedom exists. And I'll also add personal freedom and happiness.
Here.
So whether you're an entrepreneur or not, I see patients, and I'll share this, and I use these, and I tell people to buy this book, whether they're an entrepreneur or not, because the reality is there's disciplines in there that
it's
if you
universal.
implement in your own life, pretty simple ones too. We're not talking about, racking your brain and that are like, wow, that really helped me, and we'll get into. So again, welcome. Feel uncomfortable?
Not at all.
Oh man.
I'm ready to launch in.
All right. Well, I
wait to get past all this intro stuff.
Yeah, that's making it a little weird.
But it's important.
Well,
It's important.
Yeah.
It's just always funny sitting through it.
Yeah. So in the honor of you and your father, and the reason because your father was one of your mentors and big time, and maybe you could share a little bit of that with us. But I want to share a quote that's in Zig Ziglar's book, that says, "You don't build a business, you build people, and then the people build the business." And that is so true because that's the culture that you build. And when you build that, it impacts everyone. But I know that's stuff that you teach. So
I appreciate all that. That's great. And Zig Ziglar was my dad's mentor. And obviously my dad was my mentor. And so that's near and dear to my heart for you to drop those two names.
Yeah, well, I had to for you. I had to for you.
Hitting the heartstrings early.
Yeah. So, your book.
Yeah.
Tell me, and we'll get into this, obviously, but tell me, what made you say, hey, I'm going to pivot a bit, because it is, I know you write for entrepreneurs, but it's a pivot more to personal growth.
Yeah.
Really, right?
Yeah, it really is. So, it's great. So let's go back to some history, because 30 years of my life has been helping entrepreneurs succeed in their outer world. So let's spend some time in the outer world, because that's vital. That's how we entrepreneurs make an impact. That's what we're genetically encoded to do. We are creative, we're creators, we're doers, we're workers. And so I'm fanatical about helping entrepreneurs do better, do more, express their creativity. And so that's why I created EOS, was to help them run a better business. And so using you as the example, since you brought up, me forcing EOS on you, you're a great example, because you and I are a lot of things to each other. So you're my doctor, we are friends, and you're also a client of EOS. You're not my client, but you're one of our implementers' clients.
Yep.
And so it all started with me being a client of yours, and you being my doctor, and me coming to you. And I'm hopefully we'll get into some of the health stuff, because that's what this is about as well. And we can go deeper into that when you're ready to go there. But I mean, you really transformed my life. And as I watched you as my doctor build your empire, I saw all the stress cracks. And so every chance I got, I would plant a little seed for you that this place is not running well, my brother.
Yeah,
so
you did.
But it's been really fun.
In a very kind way, by the way. You just made suggestions, and I appreciate that. You offered to have coffee or have a beer or something many times.
Yeah.
And I basically, because probably my ego and I was too busy, I just was like, hey, appreciate that, man. I didn't even, I told you this many times.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what you did, really.
Yeah. So it was fun watching your transformation, because, I watched the bumpy spots as you grew, and then you implemented EOS, working with one of our implementers. And I mean, the business is just so different now. So kudos to what you built and how well you run it now. And so you're just the embodiment of why I created what I created, why I'm passionate about what I do. So I just have this way of helping entrepreneurs. It's why I'm here. My light bulb moment was in my late 20s, and I never look back. I'm here to help entrepreneurs get everything they want from their business and their lives. So that's been my life for 30 years. And you decide how much detail we need to get in there. It's I don't know how necessary it is, but all of a sudden, at 52 years old, so 4 years ago, after I sold EOS worldwide, 2 years after selling it, I had succeeded well in my outer world. I had a little bit of an awakening, which forced me to look inside and go into my inner world. So I had this aha moment when I look back at the 30 years and all of the entrepreneurs I've helped. I saw how I helped them in their outer worlds with all the content I created. And then I just saw this opportunity to go into their inner worlds, because what I kept seeing over and over and over again are these entrepreneurs very successful. And so I just call them driven entrepreneurs. That's kind of the term I like to use. Watch them all and help them all climb the mountain, get to the top of the mountain. As I did, and in almost every case, they get to the top of the mountain and they ring the bell, this thing that they've been working so hard to get to that they're convinced is going to give them happiness, peace, joy, fulfillment. And they get there and it's like, is this all there is?
Yeah.
So seeing that so many times and then experiencing it myself 4 years ago, that's when I just went inside, like I said, and it was transformative for me. And as I do with all of my content, I just teach what I needed the most at the time. And that's what I started doing 4 years ago. And that's why this book came out. And that's what it's all about, is going inside and finding inner peace. And then all of a sudden you add that inner peace to this incredible drive that we driven entrepreneurs have. And look out, baby. I mean, it's incredible.
It's incredible. And here's the thing that I want to share, because the Deep Six, is obviously our 6-point model, and, genetics and gut, and, how you detoxify, and mind-body connection, and structural issues. But one of the things that you lived, it's one probably likely I met you, was because in your drive, your driven experience, there's wear and tear, physical, emotional, psychological. There's wear and tear. And so as you're building and excited that you're building and being a visionary and driven, you get there and then you get to this. And, you weren't that broken, by the way. It wasn't that complicated. You give me a lot of credit.
I'll get into some specifics on how broken I was. I think I was more broken than you're suggesting, but you'll be the judge.
Yeah. But when
the audience will be the judge.
But very often I see, and this is so important because this is life, and it doesn't have to be horrible things like deaths, divorces, financial crises, some traumas that they experienced either when they're really young or, even in their adulthood. But it could be good things, traveling too much, grinding at the business, making money, loving others, paying bills, helping people, building an empire of wealth, but also in a company and good companies that are caring about their employees and people you literally mentor. But they end up physically even beat up because of that stress response, which affects their hormones and affects their gut and affects the mind-body connection and their sleep and all that. Yeah. And here you're saying, like, you ring the bell and they're unhappy, they're in pain, which that's life, right? We just want to be happy and avoid pain, whether it's emotional or physical. That's exactly life. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they're empty, right? Yeah. You're left empty a bit.
Yeah. So, I'll share some specifics around me, and it's the reason I do these podcasts, and I don't do a lot of them, and I'm doing this for you. I don't love talking about myself, but the reason I do them is to help. So what I hope as I share, I'm not sharing it to share my woes or to have a trauma party or a pity party or, have sympathy for me. I don't need any of that. I share it because I hope that there are people in your audience that can relate and understand, and this is a wake-up call for them. And so, I came to you. Well, I'll start here, a little higher context. So, what I did, as most of us driven entrepreneurs do, is I just had my head down working, climbing that mountain, wanted to ring that bell and just build something. And a lot of what drove me is just security, financial security. I wanted to take care of my family. I want to have options. I want to have freedom. And so everything else was kind of secondary, and like you said, including my health. So, I came to you, I can't remember, it's probably been 10 years ago now, but I'll say 8 years ago, and I came to you, and you mentioned gut health. My gut was destroyed. I didn't know why, but I came to you, exhausted, lethargic, gut issues, just kind of tired and beat up. And as we went down that road and worked on my health, it took about a year to a year and a half, but my gut transformed, So I lived with an upset stomach every other day of my life since I was 15. All of a sudden, I get an upset stomach like once a year now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
but it forced me to start to really look at my body, pay attention to my body. So that was one powerful fix. Another was discovering a heart issue that I have through a calcium test and learning from my heart doctor that in my 20s, I went so hard. I was so intense. I was so stressed out that it actually did damage to my heart, which I didn't think was possible. But again, here I was just head down.
Superhuman and driven.
Exactly right. And it was funny because I would rarely get sick. And if I ever got sick, it was on a day off. It was like my body knew when to get sick. So, I mean, my body was not in great shape below the surface, you know. Externally, I looked really healthy, energized.
Energized. Yeah.
So anyway, so I thank you for what you did for me there, and so I share all of that because sometimes you can't tell on the surface because we're going so hard as driven entrepreneurs, and we just mask what's really going on the inside. And there's such an opportunity to go inside. And what I hope is where I've always kind of dabbled, but it took me getting to the top of the mountain, you know, selling the business, finally feeling safe for the first time ever about 2 years after the sale. That's when the awakening happened to me. I hope to catch these driven entrepreneurs somewhere on their climb, ideally before they climb the mountain.
For sure.
And then also, like you said, my focus is driven entrepreneurs. That's what, you know, it's just what I'm gifted, and that's what I'm all about. But this is universal. The conversation we're having is universal. If you're a human being, this applies. But for me, that's my focus is driven entrepreneurs. But I also believe it's almost like they're the leverage point, you know, because if they can find inner peace and people start to see the inner peace in them, every driven entrepreneur, I believe mathematically on average, is touching 200 people. And imagine that. And so in our mastermind, in our group coaching, I just heard a great story last month where one of our students was sharing how he's had this relationship in this organization he's been a part of, all entrepreneurs, and he went to an event. These people have known him for years. And they said to him, there's something different about you. What's different about you? And I'm like, he told me that story. And I mean, I can't, my heart, words can't describe, because that's the goal. Yeah. That is the goal. It's something changed in him by implementing what we're about to talk about here. And people are noticing. And when they ask, that's the opportunity, because then all of a sudden he gets to say, well, here's what I'm doing. Yeah. Give this a try.
Right.
And boom. So our goal is to impact 1 million driven entrepreneurs, and then you do the math on that and the 200 people they're touching. Look out, baby. So
I like it. Look out, baby.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, and they're not that complicated. We'll get into it. We'll get into what the 10 disciplines are and all that. But there's so many things you're saying that are so important. Yeah. And I see it in practice. And by the way, this could be even, again, because you're saying it, but I want to literally hammer this home, is people are so... The norm now is so busy, crazy, multitasking, achieving, and being great at everything, by the way, being fit and being successful and being, but doing everything as much as they can perfectly and eating right, and all these pressures, and then social media happening and all these engagements. In fact, we were talking about that, about everybody's so busy and has all these plans and all that. On the autonomic nervous system, that is stress. And when there's some of these pieces aren't, in place, and some of your disciplines aren't in place, all of a sudden things start to unravel. And if you're not 20, 25 or 15 or 18, you're even in your 30s and 40s, there is a price to pay. And I kind of say, like, the deep 6 or our 6-point model is like, I tell people this, especially if they work in a business, or a CEO or president, own it, whatever. I say, I run your body like a business, because then they get that. Yeah. And the point is because all of a sudden, all these things that are hitting them physically, they make sense to them, and they can kind of think of in compartments and make it easy. Sure. But when there's that kind of effect on the body, and really, like you said, on the way up, as these driven entrepreneurs are climbing, if they're doing some of these things, they won't be beat up and exhausted, and hopefully they have obviously a good doctor, a good practitioner, or somebody that cares about them, that's doing some deep dive stuff that is enlightening them too. Yeah, and keep them out of trouble.
Yeah, I'd also like to share, at this point in my life, it's been 6 years since the sale. I'm still as driven as ever. I'm probably more driven than I was before the sale, but it's more, it's just a healthy drive now.
Yeah.
So what I describe it as is I was talking about what's going on below the surface, and I hold my hands to my chin, and I'm talking about everything below my hands. So I talk about how the tectonic plates are always shifting, or the central nervous system is amped up. And so I lived with that amped up feeling since probably age 15 to 50. And it just feels different now. So I'm still driven. The day after I sold the business, the company ran itself, had a great team in place. So the day after I sold, I had no responsibility in that business, but I had a whole bunch of passions and projects. And so since the day of that sale, I'm working just as hard building the new stuff that I'm building.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this while working. So I want to make it clear that you can, go inside, get healthy while you're climbing the mountain.
sure.
It is possible.
It is
so
possible.
don't feel like you have to sell,
You don't have to
retire,
Right.
then you can focus on your body.
Right.
And so it is a balance.
And we have been working on things roughly, whatever it is, 10 years.
Yeah.
And you did amazing within a year or two, but you don't have to retire or sell
Yeah.
or take a big break. You just have to have some insight, a little clarity, and to start making a roadmap about, to get there. But, wouldn't you even agree though, like once you started doing some physical things that we worked on, which is a lot of the, the 6-point model that I use, not only physically felt better, but it probably, right, it helped you, it helped you in business. It helped you.
There's no question. I mean, that's the point I'm trying to make, is the state of my body and my central nervous system is so different now. And even I did this, as you know, in the last 6 months, I got pretty intense with taking care of my body. So it's been these stages. What I realized at the end of last year is I really needed to spend more time with my body. So I was doing pretty darn good. And so I incorporated a very disciplined morning mobility routine that my trainer taught me. I go to my trainer once a week, which is a very intense workout. And then you had me do the chelation to remove metals.
Yeah.
Your wife, Victoria, had me do
Can I stop on this?
For sure.
I want to stop on this because I want to explain this,
Yeah.
because we will get into your 10 disciplines but we've done some things, and some of these are even just recent. But yeah, when you mention this, so you were tested, and without getting too detailed and bogged down in the details, you were tested to show, and more than once, you had heavy metals.
Yeah.
Off the top
High
of my
level
head,
of mercury. Mercury was one of them, for sure.
a few others, I think, a little arsenic, a little lead, but mercury was a big one.
Yeah.
Which come very commonly, in exposures, but a big one is obviously big fish, tuna and all these big fish. The bigger the fish, by the way, the more mercury typically, because they eat the little guys and they accumulate the mercury. Heavy metals are horrible for us, by the way. So for the listeners, heavy metals cause neurodegenerative disease. They're a risk for cancers. They actually get logged up in your plaque. So you mentioned about your cardiovascular risk, a little bit of heart stuff. Actually, studies show that on cadavers, when they, by the way, who's the best doctor? A pathologist. Why? Because he can tell you everything that's going on once you're gone.
Yeah.
But anyway, they found that 90% of plaques have heavy metals in them. So heavy metals get hung up and they block arteries, et cetera. So, you get all these negative effects, but we can get those out of you. So you were tested for high benzenes, which were in the environment.
Yeah, and then I want to go there next. So you having me do chelation, which you've been urging me to do for 3 years, and I finally caved. I've been putting it off. Then your wife, Victoria, had me do the detox with toxins, and she found toxins in a test that benzene was the big thing, and she's convinced it's because I lived on a golf course for 25 years.
Hugely in fertilizer.
Exactly, and so I fought that for a while. So the point is, I made this commitment at the end of the last year. All right, I want to say F it, but I'll just say, screw it. I'm going to listen to Doc and I'm going to do this. So I did the chelation. I did the detox that she had me do. In addition to that, again, starting that morning routine in a more disciplined way, seeing the trainer every week. I always work out every week once or twice, but I'm really, really committed to this now. In addition to that, you had me do some peptide shots for 90 days. And then you were having me, drink the silver as well. So you noticed some things. So my point I'm making in all of this is, we had this funny conversation, if you remember, about a month or two ago, where I said, I'm feeling great. And I wish I knew which one thing it was.
Well, you want the one answer.
Exactly.
Everybody wants the one answer.
Exactly.
What's the one thing?
Exactly.
Well,
So, but I caved. You're right, because your answer was it's all of it. You know.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of caved and said, I'm just going to commit to this
Yeah.
holistic approach to my body and health. You
Yeah.
know, I'm really good with all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was a really profound statement. And I sit here feeling great. You know. And so we finished the testing. Everything's cleared out of my body.
Yeah. Well, and your test came back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
No
it's great. It's
benzenes, no
great.
mercury, no everything's gone.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where you can really confidently, and we'll test you in a few years just to make sure that, you know, you stayed out of trouble, because this stuff bioaccumulates.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's the kind of stuff, the kind of shit that shows up and
Yeah,
causes
yeah.
these things when people go, how did I get cancer? How did I get neurodegenerative disease and
Yeah.
dementia? How did I get, you know, advanced cardiovascular disease? And I work out, I'm pretty healthy, and I'm not obese, and I don't smoke.
Yeah.
And so, in the way, by the way, of fixing them, you feel great.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
And
thriving.
I'm getting more sleep, and so it's
yeah,
you know
it's
it all
all-
kind of
for
adds
sure,
up.
for sure.
So the point I'm trying to make in all of that is, with this focus on my body, and then we'll start to get into the book, I'm sure. And with these 10 disciplines, they just create a foundation, a platform for space and time, a framework for you
Yeah.
to really start to pay attention to what's going on inside
Yeah.
your body.
Yeah.
In addition to, as driven entrepreneurs, this outer world stuff that we're always focused
Yeah.
on. And so I just never really paid attention to it because
Yeah.
I was climbing that mountain, man. I was trying to ring that bell.
Yeah. Well, and it's so common though, because
Yeah,
like we
yeah.
said, because when you're driven, your frontal lobe with driven people, especially visionaries, just go.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
like think, not
Yeah.
get deep, not think of the inner.
Right.
You know, I see this, by the way, in athletes, even female athletes. You don't have to be some, you know, but if you're a driven athlete, any athlete, female, male, age doesn't matter. They just keep going, yet they're
Yeah.
getting sick and getting deteriorted.
Yeah, yeah.
So this inner world, this inner deeper dive is so important.
Yeah, and that all started 10 years ago, coming to see you. So I think the other thing for anybody listening out there that's thinking, oh my God, that's a lot of shit. Just be patient, just start the process,
Yeah.
So it all started with me coming and seeing you, and it's just been this steady progression. You don't have to make it all happen in 90 days. So.
Right. No, you didn't get here in
Yeah,
90 days.
exactly, yeah.
So let's get into the book a bit,
Yeah,
because
great.
the book is great. I don't just say that. By the way, I did a course, with your partner, with Rob.
Yeah.
And
Our group coaching program.
yep. And I did this, and I read this, and I'm in it.
Yeah.
And stories in that we maybe can get a touch upon, but it was very impactful for me.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of these.
Yeah.
So there was a few I wasn't great at. In fact, the joke always was in our week meeting with one of the coaches was that, I'm really mastering about 7 of these 10. But the point is that it was very powerful for even me that does look inside. Okay. But share with us what are the 10 disciplines and kind of, or the big vision of this.
Yeah, you bet. So we call them the 10 disciplines for maximizing your energy, impact, and inner peace. Okay, and so I always love to just do a high-level overview, and then you can be the judge and jury as to how deep you want to go into them, but I always love to give the big picture first. And so here they are. Discipline number 1 is 10-year thinking. Discipline number 2 is take time off. Discipline number 3 is know thyself. Discipline number 4 is be still. Discipline number 5 is know your 100%, which is your work capacity. Discipline number 6 is say no, ... often. Discipline number 7 is don't do $25 an hour work. Discipline number 8 is prepare every night. Discipline number 9 is put everything in one place. And discipline 10 is be humble. And so, again, I'd love to make another contextual point here, because the way the book is written is the first 27 pages, Rob and I bare our soul as driven entrepreneurs and really talk about this awakening and going inside and confronting the pain and trauma and conditioning that went on. And what we can certainly come back to that. That's really important. And then from there, we get into part 1 of the book, which is talking about 3 discoveries for freeing your true self. And that's really all about the what. So you kind of get the big picture. And I love that we're kind of doing this in reverse, because we'll come back to those 3 discoveries. And then the second part of the book, the last part, is these 10 disciplines. And I want to repeat, when these 10 disciplines are in your life, it creates a framework. And the idea is you can't do this work that we're talking about without time and space. If you're not going to make the time and create the space, nothing's changing. You're just going to keep head down, climbing that mountain. And at some point, your body's going to send you a message. And I think I was fortunate and blessed that my body sent me the message before something bad happened, because I really think I was getting really close to something bad happening. So with that, whether that's true or not, who knows? But it didn't happen, knock on wood, and hopefully it doesn't happen, whatever it is. And so with that, those are the 10 disciplines. And we're having a blast with it. They're very powerful. They're very simple. And we can go as deep into them as you want. So I'm going to let you be the...
Well, I mean, they're all wonderful.
Yeah.
And they're all meaningful.
Yeah.
And, there's some that people often find are easy, and it's just a good review, and in fact, when I did my coaching session, and I think it was 11 weeks or 12 weeks, and we met weekly, and
10 weeks,
10 weeks. And for me, one of the toughest ones was be still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just because I'm busy, I'm driven, and just what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's always been tough for me to meditate, to slow down, to not even just to meditate, but just to like have some time and think, and and I still work on it.
Yeah.
But it's just not innate to me.
Yeah.
Where I had people in my group that were like, oh, they showed up and they're like, I'm meditating like an hour a day, and so it was easy for them. So these 10. It's going to be tougher and meaningful in different ways to different people,
Sure.
but it matters.
Yeah.
And I will say this, when I started incorporating a few of these that I wasn't great at, because some of it I was already doing, it 100% had impact in me, even though at the time, I'm doing our 6-point model.
Yeah.
I mean, everything I practice, I preach. I
Yeah.
work out every day.
Yeah.
I eat good. There's 10%. I'm not perfect, but I'm living it. Okay. And love it, feel great. There's nothing I'm really trying to improve. I'm very grateful for, the journeys I've gone through to get me here, just like you're talking about. But just that one that I'm still struggling at, to still be still, is, I'm fortunate enough to look out in the woods. I have a window when it's good, nice weather.
Yeah.
And I literally will just go out there and sometimes just literally be still and just look outside, look at nature, look at the leaves moving, spend time. And it sounds so like corny and weird, but things slow down.
Yeah.
And I've never in my life could say this before, but I value a squirrel. I value a butterfly.
Yeah.
I value the veins on a leaf. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't make this up, by the way.
That's awesome.
It's weird things. It's like, okay, there's more beautiful things in the world. But I mean, in my backyard, I'm able to sit and see some of these things. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And this is only 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes here and there, maybe 4 days a week, just,
awesome.
And it's really changed me. That's changed you, because I'm the go. And it's just, it reminds you of like how beautiful the world is and how lucky we are to be able to go outside and breathe fresh air.
Yeah.
And it sounds really weird, but I never, ever.
And since you're getting weird, I'll get a little weird too, because like I, for the last couple of years, have been into like trees, so you're into squirrels and butterflies.
Well, they're
but something about a tree and trees. And so if you really think about it, they're giving us life and we're giving them life.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But
and I haven't done any trips.
Yeah.
I don't eat mushrooms. I don't smoke. I don't do any of this shit.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I just want for the record.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why this to me was very like, wow, slow down. And and by the way, I sleep really good. Plenty
that's
of
all it is.
So I mean, all of a
slowing
sudden, but I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm really liking, and I'm liking it.
Yeah, and let me take the opportunity to teach. Okay, so I'm a teacher at heart, and so we're talking about this particular discipline, be still, and every discipline has a bold statement to start with. Okay, and the bold statement is designed that if you would just listen to me out there and just do what the hell I tell you, you will get all the benefits. And so that's what the bold statement is. Now, most human beings will not do that, so they have to be sold and convinced. So we'll get to that next. But the bold statement on be still is to sit in silence for 30 minutes every day. If you just did that, you would get all the benefit. Now, that's easier said than done, especially for a driven entrepreneur that's always going. And so it's really hard. But let me define stillness, because there's 4 forms of stillness.
Right.
So the first one you already mentioned is meditation. Another is prayer. Another is contemplation. And the fourth is journaling. So it's picking one or all of those four in your 30 minutes of stillness and silence, and you will get all of these benefits. And the benefits are incredible, but a couple examples is your energy will go through the roof, your clarity will go through the roof, and like you already talked about, is this calm that comes over you. But the other thing that happens, and this is why it's so hard for driven entrepreneurs to sit in stillness, is shit comes up. So I always jokingly say, when you're in stillness, stuff comes up and stuff comes down, okay? And down means you get some downloads. You get some really powerful insights in that stillness.
Yeah.
But stuff comes up, meaning that, as we talked about, this pain, this trauma, this conditioning that happens early in our life, that then our ego builds a protective layer. And we'll get into that when we talk about the 3 discoveries. That stuff is stuffed down there masterfully. And in stillness, it comes up, which is why it's terrifying for people. And so there's a great quote. This woman's quote says, "My mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try to never go there alone." And so it's just scary for people to sit in silence because stuff comes up. And when it comes up, it typically comes up as painful as it went down, but it's coming up for a reason. And so it's all about letting it come up, processing it, shedding that layer, and you just kind of reach a new level of freedom, inner peace, etc. And we'll get into more of that when we talk about the 3 discoveries.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly what I've experienced.
Here.
In some
and
of
you
those
start
moments.
to love butterflies and squirrels, and trees.
Yeah. Now my wife's going to probably take credit for some of that.
Yeah.
But by the way, she's always had that influence on me, and I'm like, yeah, babe, it's a squirrel. It's a squirrel.
And I think we lost some of your listeners because the 2 tough guys that we've always been growing up, all of a sudden we're talking about squirrels, butterflies, and trees, which we weren't doing that 10 years ago.
No. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah. Keeps me married. So, listen, if I can in these, and if, we have no script here. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the 10 disciplines.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story even just coming in here because it was like, I got to bring this up. So one of the disciplines is to say no often, right? Or it's something like that.
Yes, say no. Say no, often.
Okay, there we go. So, and that's the part that's in your book about me and what I told you about my father and that. But I'm driving here, and someone I know, great guy, one of my best friends, he's got a consultant company. He just is working, does some things right now with restoration, and he's traveling a lot, goes to this company he's consulting with in Texas, and we were starting to talk. He's getting pulled a lot, and he's thriving in a lot of ways, and he's a great guy. He's got a lot of deep insight. And I said, hey, listen, he doesn't know, by the way, this book. I brought it up, of course. And this is just literally just driving here.
Yeah, you keep putting it in front of him, but he's not getting the hint.
Yeah, I've said a few things. Yeah. I think I've said your name once or twice, but, it's okay. You did that. You had to do that to me. So, and I said, listen, I know, Rob, I know you well. Listen, and you're like me. Okay. And we're people pleasers. Okay. And I was a pathologic people pleaser. This is years ago. Okay. Because of life experiences, little traumas, little things, experiences, etc. And my father was this way. So imagine that. I'm that way. My father was that way.
That's a whole conversation we can have.
Right. Exactly. So that's part 2 or 3 we'll have. But anyway, and I just said, hey, listen, you got to say no, and you got to say no often. And when you don't, and I told him, and he knew my dad, but I said, and this is in the book, my dad was a very successful physician, a doctor for entertainers, musicians, chronic boxing team, world champions. I grew up basically going to literally major fights, major concerts, meeting people because of my father and that was back in the Elvis, even back in the day. This is 70s, 80s, 90s. Anyway, long story short is he died very sad, lonely, unfulfilled. Shouldn't have been that way. And one of the things he said to me was, where are they at now? I helped everybody. I did everything. They only call me when they need something. And it was because he just gave. That's how he was. Now, he did have like 1,500 people at his funeral, and people did value him. So the point was he felt empty. And I think that's what's big here.
That's what we're talking about.
In this say no often. That was something that it's really bothered me because I lost my dad and we were very close. And it was that for him to be that successful, that loved, you know, and then at 74 to pass, which was way too young, and him to, you know, be unhappy at the end of his life, you know, that it's really resonated with me.
Yeah, and so as I go there, you know, I want to make sure because it's a little tricky, your question, because to tie say no often to him having inner peace and inner worth and not needing others for that fulfillment are two different animals.
Yes.
But just humor, because here comes the teacher in me. Yeah, I want to now teach this say no often discipline, and I'm going to do that. But please, let's remember to come back to the point you're making, because there's something much bigger going on there where, you know, he sought love outwardly.
Yes.
He never found it inwardly. And that,
correct.
And that is not say no often, but let's,
correct.
but let's come back to it.
He was correct.
Yeah. So, and that's going to also come up in the 3 discoveries. So here comes the teacher with say no often. Let's start with the bold statement. Remember, so if you just frickin' do this thing I'm about to say, you'll get all the benefit.
Yeah.
And so the bold statement is say no to everything that doesn't fit into the first 5 disciplines. Okay. And so now what are the first 5 disciplines? So everybody out there feel this. Okay. And so if you are number 1, 10-year thinking, number 2, taking time off, number 3, you know thyself, number 4, you are being still, and number 5, you know your 100%, your work capacity. It is so freaking obvious what to say no to, because what those first 5 disciplines did for you is they established boundaries.
Yep.
It is so clear. It'd be like somebody asking you to eat a worm. You'd say no immediately, right? You just knee-jerk reaction, no. That's how easy it will be to say no to everything you shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And so we can go much deeper into that, but there's the bold statement, and there's a little bit of teaching on that. But there's a great quote by Warren Buffett who says the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. We driven entrepreneurs have to get great at saying no. We can't do it all. We can't be it all.
Right.
And so with that, there's
and that's
little insight.
Thank you, master, because apprentice here needed that.
Yeah.
But being serious, that is so big, and that one discipline is so big. And there's so many people out there that I call them people pleasers, and a lot of times I'm not saying all people pleasers. And by the way, you can be a people pleaser. It's just where it's coming from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just said. And my father's story, which is a big, deep dive into a whole nother thing.
Oh, yeah.
But he did not have inner peace.
Yeah.
He did not have inner love.
Yeah.
And so it was a Band-Aid to missing things, unhealed things.
So now let's go there and grab that. But so staying with say no and then moving into that, you know, it's really funny whenever I'm speaking to an audience and I'm teaching this discipline, you know, most people get physically uncomfortable saying no.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that connection in just a second. So what I do is I do this exercise where I have the entire audience turn to the person next to them and say no. And so the first time they do it, it's this wimpy little no. And so I make fun of them and I say, we got to be a little more conviction than that, everybody. One more time, 1, 2, 3. And then you get this great confident no. I did a talk last week for 7,000 people. I heard 7,000 no's in the room. So the point there is I'm getting them to build the muscle because we literally feel physical discomfort. Now let's go to a guy like your dad, i.e. most driven entrepreneurs. We seek love outwardly. And to say no to someone is like the antithesis of our programming because they won't love us if we say no. Yeah. So you're dealing with that psychological issue. And so what I do is in the disciplines, I cut through all the psychology. And if you want to learn all the psychology, you can spend 100 hours on each one, or you can just do the bold frickin' statement and, and cut to the chase and build the muscle because it's an action. Love saying no to people. I take great joy in saying no to. It's fun to say no. But here's what I learned about me. Aha moment in the last 6 months. I'm masterful at saying no in my business life. I'm a wimp at saying no in my personal life. It's an aha moment. And so there's a transformation going on in my personal life because I'm finally getting good at saying no in my personal life.
Yeah. They're both equal.
Yeah.
I mean, in the inner side.
Yeah.
They're both equal. They're having the same
It's all
effect.
the same shit. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So no, that's so powerful.
Can you say shit on this podcast?
Yeah, you can.
I'm going
Listen.
to try not to. I haven't said the F word yet.
No,
I
don't
love that word. I'm holding back.
No, we'll keep it clean.
And
here.
I'll try not to swear
keep it
anymore.
clean. Don't worry. We have a public service
Got it.
announcement.
Can you say darn? Can I say
You
darn?
can say darn.
Awesome.
And shucks. Yeah.
Shucks.
Yeah. So the other thing though is, and I about this discipline, which I think is really, really key, is, and you brought this up, is that they basically are reflecting on the first 5 disciplines.
Have to.
And one thing I never had done, even though I had, but not so formally, is the first discipline. And that really helps a lot. I mean, it's really, really cool, actually. So you explain the first discipline.
Yeah, and then let me just flip the whole thing. I'll say it again. If you don't know what your life looks like 10 years from now, if you don't know how much time you're going to take off every year, if you don't know yourself, really, really, really know yourself, if you aren't still on a regular basis, and if you don't know your work capacity, your magic formula, your 100%, it's impossible to know what to say no to. You're just this squishy, amorphous thing just going through life. So we all know a little bit of that. I'm trying to get you to know a lot of bit of that. So now let's go to what you're asking about 10-year thinking. So let's start with the bold statement, right? And so the bold statement is shift your thinking from short-term thinking to thinking in 10-year timeframes. And so the typical driven entrepreneur wants everything now, urgent. There's no patience there, and they want it today, this week, this month, maybe this year. And so it's just all short-term thinking. Well, it's very powerful. I learned it at 35 years old, and it changed my life. So this is 21 years ago. And so when I shifted my thinking to thinking in 10-year time frames, all of a sudden time slowed down. There was this peace that came over me. I started making better decisions. And ironically, I got there faster. And a great quote in business here, it's hard to find the originator of this quote, but what he said was, we greatly overestimate what we can accomplish in a year, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years. And so the point is, we can build an empire in 10 years. And if you'll think in those 10-year time frames, you'll make better decisions to get there faster. I mean, you can literally build an empire in 10 years.
And when you say an empire, I want to be really clear.
Whatever that means to you.
Exactly.
So it could be as simple as, we're sitting here in a podcast marketing company, and that person's dream might be to have a 50-person marketing company that's the best in Michigan. And so that's an empire. It's whatever you want. Right. It could be a 2-person organization or, a 2 million person organization. Right. It's whatever your definition is. So an empire isn't the greatest word, but it's just building what you want, knowing what you want to build.
And in another term, because I've actually used this, and so first of all, I must stop you and say this first.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, thank you deeply. And I'm thanking you for thousands of people. And the reason is because I sense doing this. I am incorporating in a different way to impact my patients, okay, and all my practitioners, okay. I'm coaching them to do this. Because when you explain to a patient, by the way, listen, I want you to do A, because if we don't, down the road you might have a heart attack, or if I don't do A, B, and C, maybe down the road you might get cancer or whatever. That doesn't resonate as much to them. But if you say, listen, I want you to think of your health in 10-year terms. You know what I mean? And where are you going to be in 10 years if we don't do something about this? And it's really made a big difference because I literally get them to stop and think that way.
Right.
So
But watch this. Let's pull it all together. So now if you out there, that driven entrepreneur, in 10 years what you want from your business, what you want from your marriage, what you want in your family, what you want with your friends, what you want financially, the net worth, what you want for your health, to the point that you just made. When you know all of that stuff and you have clarity around that stuff, it's directing your activity today. You know exactly what to not do today. In other words, if you want a $10 million net worth 10 years from now, and you're not socking anything away, and you just bought another frickin' boat or a bigger house, your actions do not align with. So when you see what you want in 10 years,
Yeah.
you make much better decisions,
Yeah, I love
and you
it.
get there faster.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it's actually it's so accurate, and it's so impactful and so simple.
Hear,
This is
hear.
not simple. I mean, it's not complicated. This is simple, simple stuff. You know what I mean?
Hear.
So anyway, that I just wanted to truly say thank you though, because that little tip, little nugget, little tip here and there.
Appreciate that.
It's so
That's my
powerful.
pleasure.
So yeah.
Thank you for the thank you.
So so I don't want to shortchange you of your second piece of your book. So get into that.
Yeah. So again, the 10 disciplines are the how. This is the how to do it. And we went in reverse here, which is kind of cool. Now I'm going to get into the what, helping you understand the big picture. So we call them the 3 discoveries to free your true self. And so these are 3 discoveries I made in the last 4 years after my awakening. Okay. And so again, the awakening was sold my business 2 years after selling it. I'm sitting in my living room feeling pretty successful. Embarrassingly, I literally thought I was perfect. So, I had the business. I was doing all the stuff I love, great family, great friends. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden the universe hits me over the head with a 2x4. And all of my past pain and trauma and conditioning that I had stuffed down for 35 years came rushing up in a really big way. And so what I learned about that experience is there's a guy by the name of Dr. Doug Brackman who wrote a book, Driven, which I recommend every driven entrepreneur read because it helps you understand the science behind what goes on inside of us as driven people. But he was sharing with me just 12 months ago. So he's working with entrepreneurs, athletes, and Navy SEALs. And he talks about with the Navy SEAL, the Navy SEAL doesn't experience the trauma on the battlefield. They experience the trauma when they're home, on their couch, watching TV, and they are safe, okay? So I'm getting chills right now. And so that's when the trauma comes up. And what I realized for me, that's exactly what happened. I was home, and I was finally safe. At that moment of feeling perfect, for the first time in my entire effing life, I felt safe. And once I felt safe, my soul just said, okay, big boy, it's time to wake up and do the real work.
Right.
And so, like I said, all that trauma came up. And so what I then learned in this last 4 years, as I then went into all of that pain to really understand what was going on, I realized and confronted my pain and trauma. Some sex abuse by older boys in the neighborhood, moving 9 times by the time I was 10, being bullied and picked on. I was this tiny, sensitive, creative kid. And what happened up until 14, all that pain, when I turned 15, alcohol touched my lips, which thank God it's never been a problem for me. I love a beer or two. But what it did is it numbed me.
Yeah.
And it numbed all the pain. And at that moment, my ego joined forces with me to create this perfect armored suit of armor to protect me from the world, to never feel the pain again. And so I created this tough guy persona, and I went forward working, fighting, drinking, just being this badass tough guy for 35 years, building my empire. And so then again, 52 years old, it all came up, and I confronted it all. So now the 3 discoveries are this. The first discovery is I am driven. So we're talking about 3 discoveries to free your true self. So that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years, is freeing my true self, realizing inner peace for the first time ever. So the first discovery, I am driven, is you as a driven entrepreneur understanding your wiring. We are different. Driven people, we're the 10% of the planet, and we're different. And the driven entrepreneurs are only 3 to 4% of the planet. So we're just different. And then again, in Dr. Doug Brackman's book, he talks about why. And it's our wiring, it's our DNA. The D2, D4 gene has an allele in our body that it doesn't fire like others. And so we don't feel satisfied. And so we're having to do like 10 times more to feel some kind of a reward. We just don't feel rewarded. And it's a blessing and a curse. So discovering this is to understand the blessing is we have superhuman stamina. We're the creators of most things on the planet. The curse is we do a lot of damage mentally, physically, emotionally to ourselves and our loved ones. And so it's understanding that. So I won't go deep into that, but it's going way deep into helping you understand what it means to be driven, the blessing and the curse. Discovery number 2 is then understanding that all decisions are made out of love or fear. And so the power of this is I've really started to understand my ego and how my ego works. I tried to understand ego for 20 years and it just would not click. And I finally get it. And stop me at any time, but I want to just create a context here, because what I realized, again, at 15 years old, my ego and I joined forces, and I created this structure that I call a suit of armor. You can also view it as layers of protection. And so I created this masterful structure to protect me from ever feeling the pain again. And so if a bully ever came at me or anyone came at me to hit my pain, I was thinking 20 moves ahead, and I could head them off in 3 moves. In other words, they'd never get there. I could head them off in 3 moves, let alone 20 moves. And so with that, if you understand that ego that's protecting you, its intentions are good. The visual I like everybody to see is just picture this dark cocoon around your true self or your soul. And so what your ego does is it traps you inside of there, trying to protect you like a protective mother, creates these layers of protection, and then there you are running full on ego, not your true self or your soul. And so love is your true self or soul. Mm-hmm. Fear is your ego. And it's this question of starting to become aware of which one's running the show. And for me, 35 years, my ego was running the show. They were all fear-based decisions. Now, I made some good love-based decisions. But the idea is to become aware and start to shift toward more love-based decisions. And the only way to do that is start to shed the layers, start to dissolve the ego, and you can do that. And that's what this book talks about. We give 30 different ways to shed layers. I'll pause there if you want to jump in on something.
Well, I just love that you.
Your
I love
gears
this.
are turning.
Well,
I got to hear what's going on in there.
Well, and I love this, and obviously reading the book.
Because you and I have talked about this. And I love your journey.
But this love, fear.
Yeah.
Everything's based on love and fear.
You got it.
And that, I've whether it was you or your book, or I've heard it forever, but I really love that, and to share that, because if people simply get that part, that's huge.
Yeah,
like, are you making a decision? Are you making a step? Or are you doing something?
Yeah.
Okay, an action based on love or based on fear?
Yeah.
And based on that, really is where you can.
Yeah, and I'm trying to give the short version of this. So you tell me how much time we have to go into this one discovery. And if we have 30 seconds, I'll do the 30-second version. If we have 5 minutes, I'll do the 5-minute version. So you tell me. I don't know where the clock is right now.
We're good, but give me 30 to 60.
Yeah, because it's like, I don't know if we're 15 minutes into this podcast or 2 hours into this podcast.
We're all good.
So
we can. Hey, we're going to order in dinner.
All right, you're giving me 60 seconds. I need to take 120 seconds. So I just want to go a little bit deeper. Okay,
so please.
So love, fear. Okay, and so basic premise: fear is the ego, love is the soul or the true self. When we say decisions, that also includes thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Okay, and so your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and decisions are either coming from love or fear. And so when you understand that very powerful dynamic, love is where you're either expanding and you're open, your heart is open. Fear is when you're contracting and your heart is closing. And so that's another way to think about this. And so the idea is awareness. And so in the book, I take you 4 levels deep into the root of what's really going on. And so now I'm just going to shoot all the way down to the 4th level, which is awareness, because awareness is where the power happens. Now let's jump to that discipline, be still. In stillness, this is where the magic happens. And so when you just start to be aware, we driven entrepreneurs make 10 times more decisions than anybody else on the planet. And so start to become aware of emotions coming up, decisions you're making. Was that love-based? Was that fear-based? Do I feel closed up? Do I feel open? And if you will just start to become aware, when it's fear-based, that's when you can start to kind of chase down the root of what's going on. That's where in stillness stuff comes up. Mm-hmm. And so 2 great books, Letting Go and Untethered Soul, are masterpieces on helping you understand what the hell I'm talking about right now, because it's a heavy topic, but it's all in Shine. So pick up Shine. And so then I'll jump to the 3rd discovery.
I love you saying that, because pick up Shine, read Shine. And if you want to get deeper even and understand this more, those Untethered Soul and
we reference that in the book. We tell you to go read that in the book, so you don't worry about writing it down. It's in Shine. And so then that takes us to the 3rd discovery, and the 3rd discovery is what this is all about. And the discovery is that it is possible to be driven and have peace. And so that was my big discovery in this last 4 years, and it terrified me. Peace terrified me. Contentment terrified me. And so my first taste of peace was when my daughter was born. It lasted an hour, and all I can tell you is when she came out, I felt this level of bliss and peace that is indescribable. And then after an hour, I shoved it back down because it scared the shit out of me. Sorry to swear again. Because it felt wimpy. I felt weak. And I thought it was going to zap me of all of my drive. And I was going to go broke and I was going to lose everything. And so we driven entrepreneurs, we feel like peace is going to zap us of our edge. Yeah. And it's just the opposite. When you find peace, your drive magnifies.
I can tell you, Alexis.
Yeah.
Has definitely made you more successful.
That's for sure. And so with that, the shift in everything I just described and what these 10 disciplines do is they shift you from an outside in driven entrepreneur to an inside out. Outside in is where, again, that's that fear-based, weighing every decision against comparison, competition, judgment, worrying about what people are going to think. You shift to this inside out approach to life where it doesn't matter what people think. It's intuition now. All of a sudden, it's more of a calling that's driving you, a purpose that's driving you. And again, it's that soul-based, true self-based thinking, decision-making, emotions, all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah. And it's so good. I mean, it's so good. And that's so on point. And to go back just a bit, because you said something, the opposite of that is how people get into, and you were in this, I'm not suggesting anything, too heavy, but what normally we do, we put on a shell.
Oh, yeah.
We grab a bottle.
Oh, man.
We feel something, doesn't feel right, let's have a drink. And by the way, some people can only be a drinker too. I mean, we're not talking about you have to be, getting drunk or going on a bender and become an alcoholic. That can happen.
Yeah.
But it also is like, what numbs this?
Yeah.
Instead of like, okay, that inner deeper drive to figure it out.
I'm just grabbing something in my notes here because I want to, when you say what numbs this, here we give examples of addictions, and I don't want to forget the laundry list.
Please. Because it doesn't have to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, it could be exercise.
Yeah, I'm trying
can
to
be the addiction.
Find it fast
I have
here.
people that over-exercise.
Yeah, and so we're talking about drinking, but it's also work is an addiction, food is an addiction, porn is an addiction, drugs are an addiction, gambling, shopping, travel, intense sports, gaming, and there's so many forms, social media, staring at these are all addictions to numb us from ever feeling pain.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's time to open up, create some space and time.
And that's what creates that true happiness.
Here.
True happiness. So that's awesome. I love that. So let me bring up, one of the things that I'll use in my practice that I got out of the book, I personally use also, but I want you to explain it, but I also want to tell you an approach I use, and I love it because I have never did this. Put time in it, put effort into it. And again, once you do that, God, it's made me soar even more. Okay. And that is be humble.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is this, I want to share this, and it's, could be my ego speaking.
Yeah.
But I've always felt like I'm humble. But share with us what that discipline is.
Yeah. So here's the bold statement. I guess if you just do this. And so the bold statement is view yourself as an equal to every person on the planet. If you just did that, you're humble. And so the way I like to describe this is we're using a spectrum. And the spectrum on one end, if you picture the word humble, on the other end, picture the word arrogant. The definition of humble and arrogant are almost identical in the dictionary. And the definition is the view of your importance in comparison to others. And simply put, arrogant people just think they're more important than others, and humble people don't think they're any more important than others. And so the way to do this exercise is if you illustrate that spectrum, think about yourself and be really honest and put a hash mark on that line. Where are you on that spectrum of humble to arrogant? And then if you really want to punch in the gut, go to the 5 most important people in your life that you trust and love and know will be honest, and have them put a hash mark about you on that line.
Right.
And that's where you'll get the truth.
No. And one of the exercises in this, when you do this, is you can make a list of, and I'll let you explain the details of this more, and I've done this, and I've had my patients do this. Just a simple thing. Of course, I recommend they read the book, but I'll say, rate not just yourself, but rate your closest people. Okay. And, what is it? 1 to arrogant? I don't know what's on the spectrum.
Yeah, just picture, you can call it 1 to 10 if you want, but just think of it as a spectrum. And on one end is humble, one is arrogant, and you just put a hash mark on that line. And so if you have friends you deem to be arrogant, then you're going to go all the way to that side of the line. If
Right.
you deem to be humble, then it's on that side of the line. And then you'll see what you're surrounding yourself with.
Exactly.
And rule of thumb, what you're surrounding yourself with is probably what you are, because we attract what we are. And that's why being humble, you attract humble people. And the journey's just better when you have a bunch of people that are humble.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this.
Yeah.
So in this, I'm going to be careful what I say.
Yeah.
Is that in this, though, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I've shared it with many people, okay, that are struggling with something. And of course, again, I recommend they read the book, but I'm like, listen, I just want you to think of this and do this little rating thing, because I can just tell what they're sharing with me. Because again, in our deep six, in our 6-point model, stress, psychological, this is very powerful, just like a hormone and just like a, gut health and just like a heavy metal and toxins, like we were talking about before. So I'm, and I have them do that. And then I say, like, you're rating them, 1 to 5 or whatever. And let's just say, so anybody beyond 3, which is going towards arrogance, okay, you just want to, I'm not telling you what to do. You might want to question it.
Yeah.
You might want to, how much time you spending with them?
Yeah.
How much, what are they doing in your life? How do they show up? Whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And this humble to arrogant thing has made me personally, with a few people, not saying names, is like, oh, I love you, from a distance. I love you, but it doesn't serve me, and it's definitely not bringing me to a better place.
Here, man.
And it's usually, the other thing is, it is draining. These people are draining. Arrogant people, if you're living in them, I don't mean the one-off exposure, but if you're living in them and they're close to you, they are definitely an energy sucker.
Yeah, and that, thank you, because that's right where I'm going. Because the way to gauge this is when you spend an hour with someone, let's just say one-on-one, and you leave that 1 hour get-together. Do you feel uplifted and energized, or do you feel drained? And that's the litmus test. And the idea, what's going to happen as you shed layers out there, this is where, as you shed the layers, let the pain come up, become healthier, have more inner peace, the addictions go away. You're going to crave the alcohol less. You're going to crave the addictions less. And those people that you used to hang around with, and some of them are drinking buddies, where all of a sudden we're used to sit and have 8 drinks. Now you only have 1 or 2 casually. It's going to feel really weird in that relationship. But that's just like an alcohol relationship. It's going to be any relationship, because if you also had friends and you were addicted to sitting together and bitching about everybody, well, that's just nothing but darkness.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, that's not going to be enjoyable to you anymore. So you're just going to be drawn to more uplifting people, more humble people, more good people. And so it gets scary, because there are changes in relationships in your life as you become healthier.
Yeah, yeah. And I've had to share even with someone I kind of coached, if you will, on this, and just said, listen, because, if it's family, could be your...
Well, those are the hard ones.
Those are the hard ones.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you don't love them.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't mean you don't love them. Doesn't mean you're not even there. It just means, are you on the phone with them every day?
Exactly.
Are you meeting with them every day, every week, or whatever?
Just cut the time.
Have awareness.
Yeah.
Especially, the biggest thing, awareness.
Yeah.
So before I move on to a couple other things that are a little bit outside of the book, and anything else, that you could share with us that's super key. Again, I think, I mean, I know it's for entrepreneurs, driven entrepreneurs. I get it, but I'm going to suggest it's for anybody could use this and get stuff out of it. Anybody, my kids could get something out of this, but anything else you'd like to share?
No, I like what you said there, because we said it earlier. And again, this content is for every human being. The focus is driven entrepreneurs. That is, again, to me, the leverage point. So that's the master plan. If we could free 1 million driven entrepreneurs' souls, then that's going to have an effect on 200 million people. So if you're not a driven entrepreneur, this book will resonate. If this conversation resonated, the book is perfect for you. And when you read it, each time you read driven entrepreneur, just replace it with whatever you are, whatever you deem yourself to be. Replace it with human being. So it transfers. And other than that, I feel like we've said it all. So there's nothing else. So, hey, I guess the one thing I do want to make sure is clear, because I don't know if we do this at the end, but I just want to urge everyone to please take the true self-assessment. This is where you know how free your true self really is. And so at the10disciplines.com, Again, the10disciplines.com. We have a free assessment there. You answer 20 questions, and it's literally going to show you how free your true self is. You can get a free chapter of the book, the first chapter. You can buy the book there. You can learn about our self-study, our group coaching, our mastermind. And then we have a podcast. You know, so if you want to go deep into this content, listen to our podcast every week as well.
No, absolutely. And I recommend everybody do that, by the way, because it's obviously
listen to this one first, though.
Yeah, but it's not, you're listening to this first, please share. But also is because all of these things, including the coaching and everything, I've personally done.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's hugely impacted my life, and it's hugely impacted the lives around me, my business, my loved ones, my children, everything, because that's what it does. It's like a spider web that just extends. So. So absolutely, but I want to shift just a little bit and have maybe a little fun.
Take me wherever you want to go.
Oh, right. This is good. All right. We're going to do another few hours. No. Get on board. No. So if you don't mind, in your health journey, what would you say with me, or, what we kind of engaged on, without too many details, but that had the biggest impact, or, really, obviously, your inner drive, your inner search was a huge impact. But on a more of a, external way, what would you say that was one of the biggest kind of impacts, or something that you're like, wow, that really helped me a lot?
Well, I already touched on it at the beginning, so I'm going to come right back to saying what I said, and then you can drill down as deep as you want. But it was my gut. I had serious gut issues, and I believe it was you that told me that I was borderline Crohn's because my stomach was such a mess. And what I learned, in addition to all the stress, it was mostly stress related. It was also diet related. And so you and I did this. You had me do this food sensitivity testing, and there were like these 7 foods that were literally killing me, And it was dairy, it was beef, it was like cinnamon, just some silly stuff too.
Yeah.
But I then reduce those foods or cut them out. Like I rarely have dairy, rarely touch dairy, and rarely have beef. And then the other 5, I can't remember what they all are off the top of my head. I just greatly reduced those. And I mean, it was literally like somebody flicked a switch. After 3 to 6 months of cutting those foods out that were killing me, trees were greener, the sky was blue. I mean, I'm not kidding you. My mental clarity went through the roof.
Well, the gut-brain connection is huge.
And like I told you, I had an upset stomach every other day of my life since I was 15 years old. I lived with that. And now 1 time a year, 2 times, maybe 3 times a year, I get an upset stomach. I mean, it's crazy. It's like life-changing.
Yeah. And the biggest thing, too, is not only that the fact that your gut doesn't bother you on a regular basis, but one of the biggest things that really people, there's talk out there, but people don't really make an association to, and you lived it, is they don't realize how their digestive health, their digestive flora, how they absorb nutrients, foods that they might be reacting to can really affect the brain. So it's how you make neurotransmitters. It's how you can create inflammation in your body. It's how you can develop, and maybe already have, autoimmune disease, and like Crohn's and like other things. But the point here is the gut-brain connection is huge, and you said it. Trees look greener. Your brain opened up. Basically, neuroinflammation calmed down. And by the way, why you were, because I just want to touch upon this for the listeners, when you have a food sensitivity, and you removed, and I don't remember these, you do, because I do this all the time in many patients, but the beef, the dairy, the whatever, many of these are IgG reactions that if we remove them, heal your gut, work on your diet, work on your digestive flora, you can incorporate them back in slowly. Some things are big reactors and people will still react to, like dairy and gluten are common ones. But I mean, it's, when you have a cinnamon reaction typically, or a, maybe,
and that's where those things, I have no problem bringing those back in. It's just dairy and beef are the 2 biggies.
Yeah, you notice it. Exactly. Yeah. So, because you develop, there's memory immune responses that you don't necessarily always get rid of, but you've done work to heal your gut, and then it impacted your brain. And that's what's like, I love to hear. And I see it all the time, because your story about, your gut for whatever, since you were 15, I hear this in the office all the time, where people will be like, man, I haven't pooped this good in my whole life. I thought going every, week, once a week was normal,
Never thought we'd be talking about pooping on a podcast.
That's what we do here. The deep 6, man.
That's deep.
So, and the other thing is, and I won't get too into it, but, common at your age, hormones impacted, a lot of things. And we find these deficiencies in many people and the heavy metal, the toxins and stuff. And I would say probably balancing in those really has made your energy and your body physically and, even by the way, to keep working out and keep lifting and keep having a trainer and fix and help fix your back and help fix your hip.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's funny. So I have a bulging disc in my back that you kept telling me over and over.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, no, it's not. I wouldn't go get an MRI. I'll fix it.
refused.
I'll fix it myself. I'll fix it myself, doc. And so after about 9 months, I finally gave in, got the MRI, and I have a freaking bulging disc.
Yeah.
So, but that's beautiful. Now I know. I'm focusing on that, so I don't listen to you all the time. I eventually come around.
You do come around.
But that's another example. So I've really focused on that for 3 months. It's like night and day.
Yeah.
So when I would play golf, I would live with back pain for like 7 days after golf. It was gone in 24 hours. I had the back pain after golf for about a day, gone in 24 hours because I've gone to the root of what's really going on.
Yeah. And the point, by the way, because a lot of people had your response, when they have a structural, by the way, one of our 6-point models is structural.
Yeah.
By the way, when I say that, it can be a spine, it can be a hip, it can be, by the way, structural things since surgery, like gut, people that have had gut surgeries, they get structural changes.
Yeah.
It can literally be your heart. Your heart, what do you mean? Well, because people develop, congenitally heart things or with aging develop congenital changes in their heart. I don't want to get too into that, but my point is that's what structural means.
Yeah.
We had a structural problem. The only reason I wanted you to have MRI, I wasn't putting you down a surgery path.
Exactly.
I don't want you to have surgery. You're not ever having surgery.
Exactly.
My point was give me info so we know how to target the treatment.
But what's really amazing is what came out of it, So then I was able to go to my trainer and show him exactly what it was.
Yeah.
You had me go to physical therapy, and what physical therapy taught me is just some really great disciplines. This gets to this morning mobility routine, ultimately that my trainer showed me. But what I learned is how tight my hips and my hip flexors were. And so that's what I'm focusing on in this morning routine, and the trainer focuses on, and certainly building core strength as well.
Yeah.
But it was incredible how tight. And then even my T-spine was tight as well.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden it's like 3-4 months later of doing that. I'm not super flexible, but it is a night and day
Now,
difference.
I have a funny question because somebody gave me a business idea.
Yeah.
And I said, no. You get that?
You and I 10 years ago? Or
Yeah.
were you talking?
No, this is just somebody said this to me. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Are you hitting the golf ball farther?
Am I?
Yeah.
Well, it was my first round of the summer.
Oh, okay.
But I was a rock star the first 5 holes.
Okay.
And then
Well,
I
the
went
only
back
reason
to my
I'm
old
asking
self.
is because I have a few patients, and they have issues, whether it's something hormonal or structural, or they're just fatigued or whatever. And literally, whether it's their business life, their wealth management or something, they're golfing a lot, or maybe they work from home, so they're golfing a lot or whatever. And so they're golfing 3-4 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay, in the summer, of course.
Yeah.
And they'll say to me, because this is what matters to guys.
Yeah.
is that they're golfing and golfing better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've given up on hitting it further, but it's too hard to tell because I'm the guy that I play 10 rounds a summer. I'm not a big golfer.
Gotcha,
it's not like that.
Okay.
But it's,
you're not having
think
pain.
of the frustration of the last 10 years of dealing with back pain after a round.
Yeah, for a week.
I mean, what a difference.
Yeah,
It's crazy, the difference.
Well, this guy's hitting the ball further and playing better, he says. And he's like, man, you could have like a side thing just for golfers.
Yeah.
And like just help them physically so they could golf better.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
And they're like, I could send the whole Oakland Hills here.
Yeah. No, for me, if I shoot anywhere in the 90s, I'm not a great golfer. I just love being out there
I just thought it
playing
was
golf
funny.
with people I love.
And I said that guy, of course, he's a true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So listen, I have a segment before we close up
yeah.
here, okay? And this is, I haven't even filled you in on this. So this is my book.
Oh, your
And
book.
by the way, and parts of this are coming out in a real book.
Oh, nice.
In about 6 months. But this is my journal. I have actually 2 of these because the other one's filled. But I write random things in here, and I do this every podcast. Some of them are medical. Some of them you won't be able to read, so I'll have to help you because of my scratch.
Sure.
And some of them are even business, entrepreneurial, spiritual, whatever. But just randomly pick whatever you want, read it, and we'll talk about it.
Really?
So you're just going to read
I'm
it.
just going to pick a page?
So whatever you want. Just if something looks interesting, sounds interesting.
There's like 50 pages.
Well, that's why it's random. I mean, read something, say, Doc, what does this mean? And I'll explain it, and you can even enlighten us in your thoughts.
Okay, so
You,
this one I just jumped out at.
yeah. Go for it.
So this says when your husband breathes and you want to choke him, choke your progesterone.
Check your progesterone.
Check your progesterone.
Yeah. So here, I'll read it. I'll read. Oh,
That's the one I want to hear about.
Yeah. No. This is good. Yeah. When your husband breathes and you want to choke him, check your progesterone. So this is because it's a little bit of a joke, but the reality is this: is that I see many patients that literally, of course, women, the wives, and could be a girlfriend, but usually it's the wife.
Yeah.
That is like, I am on edge. I'm whatever. I'm a happy person. I have a great life, and I'm edgy. And this isn't me. And man, I mean, I've literally heard that term, and I literally, like, my husband chews. I want to choke. I want to kill him. Or like if he snores, I literally want to choke him.
Yeah.
The point in that is they're happy, they're in love, they have a good marriage, they whatever.
Yeah.
But what happens is women go into perimenopause. Okay, so as they go towards menopause, they're not fully menopause, so they're still cycling and all that. They get a decline in progesterone. Okay. And that is a hormone that actually is very calming. It creates less anxiety. Helps libido a bit. You're welcome. It's a feel good hormone, we call it. Now it has other properties to pregnancy and has other properties to the menstrual cycle, but in the mood aspect and in the libido aspect and in what I would say a relationship aspect, it is huge. So that's kind of a tongue in cheek joke.
Got it, yeah.
But it is like, I actually often know right away what I need to look at and look at their progesterone ratios and fix that, and they're thrilled and they're happy and everybody, and the home is a pleasant place again.
Very cool. Very cool.
So that's all that is. I'm glad to actually pull that out. Some people pull out some really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's tough.
Yeah. That's the one that jumped out at me.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Gino, thank you so much for joining us. We will have all this tagged, for how to connect with Shine, the 10 disciplines,
right.
and taking the test that's free on the 10 disciplines website.
Yep.
Right.
You got it.
Because that's the first step. That'd be because if you know your true self.
Here.
That's the first step.
Know how free you are, so you know what work is ahead of you.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is awesome. We could talk for another hour. That. Hopefully I'll have you back and you'll accept it. I won't make you golf with me, but I'm as bad as you, just so you know.
Good. Good.
So because by the way, you know what a good doctor is? A bad golfer.
That's what you want.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Gino. I appreciate you, man. I love you. You're the best, and you've really had such an impact in my life. I value you so much. So thanks again.
Appreciate you, brother.
This is Dr. Lewerenz on the Deep Six podcast. Thanks for joining us, where we make this journey to help you thrive and not just survive.